Welcome, everyone, back to Noob to Weeb. I'm your weeb, Matthew Rowe.
And I'm your noob, David Short.
Every 2 weeks, I choose an anime that David hasn't seen.
And I feel the need to buy a body pillow now.
This week, the mind-melding, emotional roller coaster Millennium Actress, produced by Studio Madhouse and written and directed by Satoshi Kon in 2001. So, David, please synopsis this film for us.
Yeah, sure. I'll synopsis this super happy, totally not devastating movie.
So much joy. So much joy and frolicking in fields of flowers.
It was... So, a filmmaker named Genya seeks out a retired actress named Chiyoko Fujiwara in order to make a documentary about her life. When he finds her, he gives her a sled called Rosebud. I mean, a key that was given to her by a painter she met in her youth. When the man disappears without a trace, Chiyoko swears that she will find him. She takes the only logical path, starring in a series of high-budget films across the globe. Makes sense.
Logic.
The film is all about her, like the film, not the film they're making, Millennium Actress, is all about her recounting her life's journey. Or it's maybe like showcasing her career in filmmaking. Or maybe it's both. Or neither.
Everything. It's like a David Lynch movie. It's everything.
All the while, Genya and his cameraman are literally sucked into her story, which Genya is very keen to role play as his self-insert character whenever he can.
I love it!
The blurriness between the mirrors of her film and her life all climax at a beautiful ending that I am not going to spoil right now. But on one last note, the earthquakes are apparently very common and a sign of great change or something. So yeah. That's what I got.
It's what you got. So, all right. So first and foremost, because, I've already expressed my joy of a couple of them, as far as the characters in Millennium Actress goes, what kind of a protagonist? Because we have really two protagonists here.
Right.
We have Genya and then we have Chiyoko. What do you think of Genya as a protagonist in one particular style, and what do you think of Chiyoko as both the protagonist of the movie as well as kind of its subject at the same time, like a documentary in a way? Because Genya is making a documentary about her life, so it makes sense that that's kind of the motif there.
Yeah, no, I enjoy both of them in their own different ways. When it came down to Genya's more comedic aspects of it, because that is very prevalent at the beginning.
Oh my God, yes.
That's kind of setting a certain tone for me.
Especially the videographer, the camera operator that's with him.
God, what was his name?
I don't even know if he has a name.
He has a name. It's Ida, Kyoji, Kyoji. I can never tell which one's first name, last name.
It's written differently depending on what version you get.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Ida's what they called him, but yeah, he's just the straight man to Genya's off the wall craziness.
Well, I love his fourth wall breaks and whatnot.
Oh yeah,
he's like, especially that one part. He's like, "Where was Manchuria? Why are we being attacked by samurai right now?"
And even at points, there was a point where it becomes like she was a princess in one movie and then immediately transitions to her being a ninja in the next.
Yeah,
and he comments just like, as she's doing ninja tricks, like, princess is able to do that? What? Like, he's just like commenting. He doesn't know where these movies are ending or starting.
Yeah, and Genya is constantly like, how do you not know this movie? Like, he knows every single film.
There's one point where he stumbles into the next movie wearing the costume from the last movie.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
And the cameraman's just like, yo, you're not dressed for the era.
Yeah, it's like, you're dressed in the wrong period.
But no, I definitely loved all Genya stuff, but it set a certain tone for the movie, especially since he was so prevalent at the very beginning of it.
Yeah.
And I assumed he'd be more of... When I first went into it, once I saw they were doing the documentary, I assumed it was going to be the same sort of style as Titanic, where it was they have this framing device, but then we go into the story that would all be about Chiyoko. But
Yeah, honestly, I could see that being the case because what was it? Titanic came out only a couple of years before this, and Satoshi Kon was constantly interviewed, and he was constantly says, like, you can see it in his movies too, that how much he was heavily influenced by Western films. He was more influenced by Western films than he was Japanese media.
which is strange because when watching through the first few movies that had Chiyoko in them, it was like samurai themed,
Yeah,
ninja
absolutely.
themed, geisha themed. I was like, wow, this is just Japan, man.
It absolutely is. She's just going through all the genre films. That was because I think I'm going to gush here just a tiny bit,
go
just
ahead.
just for right this second, because I'll get back to your thoughts. But one thing that I find really fascinating by the way Millennium Actress works is that every single film that Chiyoko acts in that is also kind of stitched into the weave of her whole life story is entirely representative of each decade that she lives through. So like you have like the earlier movies which were all like, you know, espionage and war films, and then you had like in the 50s she was in like kaiju movies, and like it all keeps emerging, and it always, and then of course when, you know, it got more into I would say, you know, into like the modern age, she was like, you know, in space travel movies and all that jazz.
The movie opens with one of her last roles.
Yeah, her very last movie that she was
which
in.
struck me as sort of around the same time as like 2001: A Space Odyssey. It was like that.
Yeah,
sort of,
it's like the 60s, I think.
yeah, late 60s,
that was like her
early 70s, where they're just like, wait a minute, hold on, people landed on the moon. Why are we not doing anything with that?
Let's do a moon movie quickly.
Yeah, pretty much. But no, when it comes down to Chiyoko, and as we begin to learn more about her, because over the course of the movie, Genya, while he's still prevalent throughout the movie, it's definitely less focused on the fact that they're making this documentary and more focused on what the documentary's about.
Yeah, the focus definitely shifts. He never goes away.
Yeah.
He's
always
still
there.
Yeah, he's still
there
a prevalent
to move
character.
it along.
Yeah.
But when it starts shifting over to Chiyoko, it's definitely more focused on her emotional beats, and as the protagonist, I'm completely fine with that too. It just it did a good job of transitioning between the over the top sort of humor to get you into it, and then lulling you into this like, okay, here's what her life is like, here's her feelings towards things, and by the time that I'm just gonna call it the theft happens. I'm not gonna go too much in case that's spoilers.
Absolutely.
By the time the theft happens, you're like feeling that you're completely in on Chiyoko's mindset there.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, well, that's kind of leads me into my next question, is the fact that because Genya and Chiyoko's role in the story and attitude in the story are, I mean, there are moments where they are in kind of, I guess, in the same wavelength, but they kind of contrast each other. Do you believe that the way that the story kind of evolves from a director and his comic cameraman making a movie to this really kind of heart-wrenching emotional story, do you find that each main story arc is woven together well, or do you find that there were moments where one particular story kind of made the other story feel a little awkward being in the actual movie?
See, they never really conflicted. There was never a point where it was like whiplash, I would say. That like it switched from, the only point I can think of was, I can't remember exactly which scene it was in. I think it was in the princess one that she began with, where she drank some weird tea or something.
Oh, I was about to say that. Yeah.
As soon as it came from that scene, there was a scene where like Genya's playing the samurai who like rides into battle with her, and he's shot down, and it immediately cuts to showing them sitting on the couch playing out this scene.
Yeah.
Immediately. But it's not a whiplash as much as it's like, because Genya shouldn't be in the scene anyway. So you're already kind of disconnected from it. So when it cuts back to the couch, it's just totally comedic. It's not like oh no, but I was really feeling his death in that moment sort of thing.
I mean, I think the only times that Genya his involvement in the movies and the past scenes or something like that. Like even when he is crying in the scene, it's just because he finds these movies so moving.
Oh yeah.
And the movies themselves, at least at that moment, like they're always very melodramatic. But I think that the one thing that Cohn went through as kind of a motif going back and forth is during that scene where she drinks the tea, where the old woman and the she's kind of like spinning that wheel.
Right.
She keeps coming back after that though, and it's
Yeah.
not in the context of that movie. It's literally in Chiyoko's mind.
And that's always where it's that's like as soon as the first scene happens of she's running down the train station and
Yeah.
it's revealed like that was just the last scene for the movie.
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, so what actually happened? And
Exactly. Yeah.
with-
The first
with
time
that
I
old
watched it, I'm
lady.
like, "What the fuck is this noise?"
And with that old lady, it's the same sort of deal where it's like, okay, that's really does seem like scene in a movie. Like that's something that's not real. But then it keeps popping up in what things that are clearly, or I shouldn't even say clearly because nothing's clear. Things that most would presume are real moments in her life and not movies.
Yeah.
So it's something that either was from a movie that affected her or was just out of the movie entirely, or maybe it was actually a ghost, a la like the Exorcist movie with
It's
its
funny
ghost.
because if you look at all of the different layers here, you have the story about Genya making the documentary, the documentary itself, Chiyoko's movie career and her memories, and then you also have the mental state of her in those memories at that particular time. So you have a lot of these subconscious levels constantly working back and forth. The first time I watched this movie, I think maybe about half the film, I kept getting duped that like, oh wait, this is another film again, or it's the way that Cohen is able to merge the different timelines happening at the same time and also make it the films at the same time. It made it so it kind of keeps you on your toes in a way. You can never, there's never any passive watching of this type of film.
Oh, yeah.
You have to be fully engaged or else you're going to miss a lot of information in a very short span of time.
Oh yeah, like I've in going through this, as soon as it reached that train station scene, I like sat up and I was like, wait, okay,
I almost
hold on,
cried during that scene. I will say, because I'm like, oh no, get to him, come on, go.
It does a great job of saying, and I mean, in fairness, in the movie itself, like the movie within a movie within itself, that probably was like the climactic scene. So from that standpoint, yeah, that was great.
Oh,
But
yeah.
here it's
Yeah.
like 10 minutes in, and it's like, whatever, keep moving.
And I think that's one of the reasons that I feel that Millennium Actress has such a high emotional factor to it, because it's a constant succession of movies, of climaxes from other movies. So
There's
you have this high emotional peak that is constantly getting hit for different reasons.
Yeah, I immediately, as soon as it hit the scene where it just kind of like it took a break and just started like montaging through her life sort
Yeah.
of thing and showing like
Yeah.
a bunch of different movies that she did in a quick succession, I was immediately, the first thing that popped in my head was like, how in the world has this one not had a Hollywood adaptation?
Yeah, you would
Because
think.
you would think because like just thinking about the Academy, I mean, I know that's not the whole thing of Hollywood as a whole, but thinking about the Academy and how much it adores movies that talk about movies.
Oh yeah, that's
This is
prime
like-
Oscar bait.
This is straight up, and especially with all those emotional beats and everything like that, I mean, Ghost in the Shell was the one that like had the widest spread in the way of an anime movie
Yeah.
for Hollywood, but that one, I mean, it's an action piece. It was always
I
just
mean, they
weird.
are they are making Akira, and was it?
But that's also
Taika
gonna have-
Waititi is going to be directing it apparently.
That's also going to have emotional beats with its action set pieces. So
Oh yeah, I
hopefully-
mean, I'm curious about how they're going to do that, just because of the body horror that exists in Akira.
I'm curious how they're going to do it with Taika Waititi directing it.
I can believe it. Now, he's got an interesting style to a point in which that I think that he would definitely make it interesting, and I also know that DiCaprio is producing it.
Oh, well, all right then. I trust that man with my life, whether I should or not. So,
But getting back to the film,
Yeah.
are there any particular moments in the movie that really stick out more than the others? Like there's a handful for me, but
I mean, not quite diving entirely into spoilers yet, but the moment where she's running for the painter, the whole train and everything like that,
yeah,
that
yeah,
where it's showing how absolutely everything is like repeated and mirroring and exactly symmetrical to her movies, to earlier points in her life, to
Yeah.
everything. It just is, and it's in such quick cuts, and it's always matching, like match shots as they keep
Yeah,
matching up with each
yeah.
other. You never feel lost with the fact of like what they're doing because they've explained what, because I think it helped that everyone was in different costumes throughout each movie.
Yeah.
So that as soon as you see one costume, you're like, oh, that's the emotional state she was in there. Oh, that's the emotional state she was in there. And you keep, as soon as it cuts to that costume, you're immediately able to be like, oh, that's what this is representing. That's what this is representing. So as soon as they start doing like upwards of probably 10 cuts in 10 seconds of just like mirroring these same shots of like banging on a door
Yeah.
or whatever, you immediately get the feeling of like, okay, this is what this character's going through. And it's, for any other movie, showing her going after a, like hopping on a train, running away, whatever that, they can do all those quick cuts, but it's not going to be quick cuts to within moments of her own life.
yeah, yeah.
That wouldn't, I think, have as much of an impact as that moment did, where it's just so it's like, no, this is what everything was leading up to. And that moment alone, I was just like, damn, all right, you fucking A+, good job, you did it.
I think it's interesting because when you say all about the mirror, I think out of all the movies, have you seen any of the other films from Satoshi Kon?
I looked through his filmography. I think I began watching a little bit of Perfect Blue, but didn't quite get through it enough that I don't remember anything about it. I watched Paprika once the whole way through, but that was before, like, I don't think I was even paying attention really. I wasn't appreciating it for what it was. So I could probably watch it again and be like, oh shit, wait, what? Especially with, I think I'm looking on my shelf right now. I think I have like 2 different copies of Inception. So God knows I'd be like, yep.
Yeah, yeah. There'll be a whole lot of yep. This makes sense. Yep.
Yep.
But I think one of the reasons why I bring it up is that because Satoshi Kon's style is so iconic, his whole thing is always about blending fantasy and reality together, so you're not exactly sure about what is what at any particular time. The best examples are definitely, I think, Paprika and Paranoia Agent. But Millennium Actress, I feel, is able to do it as well as it does because the entire movie is about chasing. It's about not just chasing, this person. It's about chasing dreams. It's about chasing goals, chasing ambitions. Finding reasons to continue pushing yourself through life. And
I guess, do you want to open up spoilers now?
yeah, I think that this is a good time to open up on the spoilers there. So warning for everybody else.
Definitely watch it. Definitely watch it.
We'll come back to the end and whatnot. So we'll come back
Yeah.
at the end for full things. But
Yep.
getting into the spoiler territory because it feels almost weird to get into the territory to the very end because we haven't even really brought up the main antagonist in the
No,
film.
fair. Yeah.
Who was Chiyoko's main rival?
I thought we were talking about the Earth and time itself.
I mean, the Earth and time itself is everyone's enemy.
Her name was Eiko.
Eiko. Yeah.
Yep.
What do you think about Eiko? Actually, that's a point of contention with some people.
When it came down to Eiko's character, I knew exactly what her character was going to be before anything happened. I knew it was going to be a story of jealousy and, the young actress supplanting the big star and all that. I could tell exactly where that was going.
Yeah.
And it played out that exact way, except for the reveal when she finds the key after it was lost, aka stolen by Eiko, as part of a plan to get her to marry the one director. When it came down to that, it still played out when she was like revealing the plan. She was like, "Oh, I did it for jealousy. I was jealous of youth," and I was like, "Yeah, I get it." But there was one line she said that changed the character for me, which was how in her age she was too tired to even hate her anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it. I don't know. I can't explain why it changed my perspective on the character that much, but it did. It changed it not to so much of like, yeah, you're just a bad person. It's just like, no, you're someone who was you're hit by time like everyone else is.
Yeah.
And it sucks for everyone involved, but it has to happen. And it made it a bit more relatable for me.
I get that, and I think that also the contrast between how Eiko and Chiyoko handle the passing of time is really interesting, because I wouldn't necessarily say Chiyoko handles it with a lot more grace, though she does.
Chiyoko never lets on that she's getting old. Like
No.
nothing that ever passes through, even when she's
Well, it's not something that she's really concerned about. She's constantly chasing.
the painter.
She's chasing. It's not even the painter after that, because of course, at the end of the movie,
Right.
she says, really, the chase is what I think I love the most.
She's chasing the chase.
She's constantly. It's chasing something that you really can't actually get. And I cannot remember the name of the philosopher. And my philosophy people are not going to let me live this down. But there was
Such a major audience. How dare you?
No, my friends and whatnot. If they find out
okay.
about this, they're geeky to that point in which that they're just going to go ahead and say that. But
Gotcha.
there was a philosopher. One of his arguments was that one of the reasons why we have fantastical ambitions and lusts for some specific thing that we chase for after all the time, they have to be unrealistic, because if we ever grab it, if we ever reach it, we cannot possibly want it anymore, because it's the allure of it. It's the allure itself rather than the object of your allure that is really what's driving you. And I think one of those aspects of that principle is kind of throughout this movie, because it doesn't really go anywhere. It's all about the fullness of the entire journey of Chiyoko's life, at least to me.
Right.
I like to know what you think,
Yeah,
too.
no. I mean, based off that philosophy thing, it's the same sort of aspect of don't mute your heroes.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, but no, yeah, I completely agree with that, because there's a point at the very end where it's revealed that the painter, like, he wasn't even alive, like, probably 6 months afterwards.
Yeah, he's been dead for years.
He was captured and killed almost immediately. But I think the man who captured him said, like, she was chasing a shadow.
Yeah.
So it's that sort
Dude,
of...
that guy, that police guy at the end, man, he looked fucking gnarly.
I really want to know, like, I don't know enough about Japan's history.
I know a little here.
I'm
and
assuming
there.
that the war that they were talking about was World War II.
Yeah, it absolutely was.
So, like, I knew that there was, World War II, and then to modern age, like, it's all just kind of a blur, where I'm just like, yeah, the USA probably fucked up a lot of shit, and we just ended up with where we're at.
There's a lot of nuance.
And I don't know nearly enough about it, but I'd like to know more about it, just because that police officer, like, he said one line which was like, I was an evil man serving other evil men with evil ambitions. I was like, who did you represent? Who are we talking about here?
Well, it's interesting too, because if you look at a lot of the films that were coming out in Japan in like the 1950s and 60s, it was in response to two major things. It was in response to the birth of the atomic age.
Right.
So we have a lot of we have the kaiju movies and the special effects sci-fi movies.
I wish they would have focused on that a little bit in this one. It got a little throwaway thing of just like, look at Godzilla over there.
Yeah,
like,
it's kind of like thrown into the back. I mean, I guess because one thing that you can see that they use the different genres, the different I wouldn't say stereotypical. I would say just the generic genres in Japanese filmmaking. I mean, of course, you have the Ronin movies, you have the ninja film, you have like the geisha movie, you have
Right.
all these tropes that are common there, and
Mm-hmm.
they're always being utilized for a specific role at that time.
Yeah.
Because I also think one of the reasons why the movie is called Millennium Actress is not just because uh, she herself has lived from the last millennium to the new one. It's
Mm-hmm.
also because that her entire story is very emblematic of Japan itself.
Yeah.
I feel that because not only just because she goes through all the different genres and whatnot, but from what I've been able to understand from documentaries, books, and all that kind of stuff. Of course, it's still a very narrow viewpoint, and I have very limited cursory knowledge of it. But at the same time, when Japan during the eras in which that are depicted during the films, uh, it was struggling to figure out its own identity. It was struggling to figure out what it needed to do, where it needed to go, and that you really see that this idealized romantic kind of object that Chiyoko is chasing throughout the film is almost in a way emblematic of Japan trying to chase after this idealized version of what they want their life to be. But also it's different because Chiyoko is honestly constantly trying to find this guy, not because I would say she loves him in the traditional sense. It's constantly to return the key to
Right.
him. So it's the fact that she is trying constantly to return something in order to continue the relationship forward. I think there's
Yeah.
been a lot of conversations back and forth about what the possibilities of what the key could possibly represent. Do you think that it's allegorical in any particular way, or do you think it's simply just like a MacGuffin object that was needed to propel the plot?
See, when it comes down to something like a key, there's always some deeper meaning to it. Like,
There's a key. It's something.
yeah, if it were the Pulp Fiction briefcase, then fine, whatever. That's just a briefcase to, have and get along with things. But when it comes down to a key, there's always so much symbolic stuff of like, oh, a key to the heart, key to the mind, key to blah
Yeah.
blah blah. Like
Heart
there's
of the
always-
ocean, that type of shit.
Yeah, exactly. You can make it represent whatever you want it to represent.
Even though the heart of the ocean is not a key, just make sure I determined that it's just
Yeah.
it's something used as a metaphor for the larger story. Yeah.
Yeah, but when it comes down to this particular key, they double down in that they not only don't tell you what specifically it unlocks, they specifically tell you that it unlocks the most important thing,
Yeah.
which is like just immediately like, oh yeah, so it is like the key to the heart. No, it's the key to the mind. It's like, yeah, okay,
But it could
we
be
just-
literal too, because like you look at the painter,
Mm-hmm.
his from the details that we understand, he was like a revolutionary.
Yeah, he was anti-government, I think, like during the last emperor during that right before
Yeah.
the World War.
Yeah, something along those. Yeah, it was something along those lines. There was some uprising going up. He because they were during this time before the official World War II. They were in the middle of like butchering their way across China.
Right.
And they had already taken Manchuria by this point and renamed it Manchukuo. So the rape of Manchuria was already happening. So I think that might be one of the things about the police officers saying, I was doing evil things for evil men, because the atrocities that were going on that time are still. I mean, that was one of the reasons why when when the fucking Olympics happened. In Beijing, and the Japanese, they came there. That was the first time that Japan had officially come to China since World War II. So
Right.
that's why tensions were so fucking high.
Oh yeah, no, and I mean, what? Just going back to the, like, what the key is
Yeah.
from just an in-movie perspective of, like, using what we know about the painter and all that. Honestly, I feel like it is. She directly looked at the briefcase that he
Yeah.
had with him, and then looked at the key. So in movie language, that tells us the key goes to the briefcase.
Yeah.
What was in the briefcase? I mean, it can't be anything
MacGuffin.
bigger. Yeah, exactly. It's Marcellus Wallace's soul or whatever. But no, it's literally entirely nothing, because like you said earlier, the point wasn't to return the key. The point was to chase after him to return the key.
And the documentary portion of the movie
Oh
is
God, I would love to actually watch that documentary.
yeah, seriously.
Like, to see how it ended up.
Like, how did it actually physically look when they were going through and talking about these movies and these stories? Because, of course, we're seeing the representation of it.
Now that we're still in spoiler mode, because I'm definitely going to double down on spoilers here, I can imagine that the last shot of the movie is like some peaceful lily pond or something, and the text just pops up on screen with like, upon the day of our recording of this footage, Chiyoko died of whatever, and it's just be
A
like
heart
oh
attack
my-
or something.
Yeah, and I just be like I can just see that being the most heartbreaking ending
Yeah,
to the documentary.
it's like,
I'd be
this
like, "Ah."
remains the final footage of
Exactly.
of Chiyoki Fujiwara.
Oh God.
Chiyoki, but yeah, and honestly, like, when they were having the final montage at the end, like when Chiyoko was dying, and it's going up, and then finally, it goes into that final shot, and she just says, the chase is what I really love the most. The second time I watched this movie, I broke the fuck down.
Wow.
This is literally the only one of only two films I've ever cried in. And
See, I've definitely cried at a lot more films. I can't remember them all offhandedly.
I'm
but,
such a desensitized son of a bitch, though.
I guess, but I didn't cry during this one. I got sad. I didn't cry. But
Like, it was just, I think it wasn't really because it was sad to me necessarily, because it definitely is, and it definitely is at parts.
yeah.
But the story itself is so encompassing. I felt, honestly, because Chiyoko is one of my favorite movie protagonists, period.
Oh yeah,
And it's
I can see that
because
entirely.
yeah, I feel, just because of the way that the story is structured, I feel that it was I felt like I knew Chiyoko fully as a person. And even though I didn't understand everything about her, I didn't know all of her secrets and all of the little things that she thought or did or whatever. And of course, when you mix together all of the movie sets and all that jazz into the story, you're not getting the whole actual story of her life.
To be fair, do you know if you knew anything about her? Like, you feel like you knew all this stuff, but was it all just movies?
And that's the thing, though. It's like, because at the same time, though, it's representative of how we feel with actresses, because we only know them through the movies that they, or actors or anybody who's on the screen, because we only know them through their movies. We like actors because of how they portray certain characters.
Yeah, it's like the current Keanu Reeves thing
Oh,
going
yeah,
on, where-
absolutely.
he's an amazing guy offset as well, from everything everyone's ever said.
Yeah.
But people love him because of, like, his badassery in John Wick, his lighthearted nature in other films. It's because of the roles we see him in that gives him the positive thing. If he were in the same sort of position that Eiko was in this movie,
Yeah.
where it's like constantly in that role of the bitch,
Yeah.
like, I doubt it'd be the problem. It'd be the same problem of people who see villains in movies and then in real life treat them like those villains.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's like people who it's like horror movie icons. It's a little hard for the people to play who play the creatures and stuff like that to get the kind of love that the people who play the heroes.
Right.
And of course, because we relate to them, the main protagonists in the movies, we project what we know and what we feel as a person. We project onto them, and then we kind of live vicariously in the movie through the main character. Like, you feel throughout the course of the film that you really are experiencing her life with her, but then again, and then at the same time, most of the movie is just the movies that she was in. So as a result of that, you're not really experiencing her actual life. You're experiencing your vision of what her life was. So it's honestly through Genya's perspective, because Genya knew her, working on set with her, And I think that's one of the reasons why in the later films, when she was more as an adult, more in getting closer and closer to actual, I would say she was like in her 30s, mid 30s or something like that.
Right.
But like the tone of the movie was a lot more realistic than the first half of the movie, which is way more fanciful and way more full of movies. It's Genya's reaction. It was his way of knowing who Chiyoko was.
Yeah, it's a matter of when you don't have that much knowledge, firsthand knowledge of a person at a certain age, you just kind of have to extrapolate from things you've heard, things you've done, and you're going to fill in the blanks with whatever your preconceived notions already are.
Absolutely, yeah.
So he obviously is very fond of her. So
yeah, and he honestly is in love with her, I would think.
Yeah,
but at the same time, though, I think he fully understands that his feeling of in love with her is really her as an actress, not as I'm in love with you because I want to be with you type of stuff. He was always off to the side, but I don't know. It's just weird. I think it also kind of relates a little bit back to idol worship in Japan, which, of course, Millennium Actress and Perfect Blue are both extreme representatives of.
Yeah.
But of course, they're on both opposite sides of the spectrum, really.
Yeah.
All right. So the last couple of things I want to point on before we get into final thoughts. Okay. As far as animation quality and how it's used, and also the music that's used and whatnot in order to do you think that from what you've seen of anime right now in relation to other types of projects that I guess you could say are somewhat like this, because there's nothing exactly like Satoshi Kon. He was kind of a one-of-a-kind kind of director, but in relation to the other anime you've seen, how does this animation quality and how does the music quality stack up against other things?
When it comes down to animation quality, the first thing that reminded me of was they are going out to her estate, her hidden far off in like the wooded area, and it reminded me very much of the opening scene from Spirited Away, where
I can believe that. Yeah,
they're driving that car down through like all the back roads and whatever, and it gets into that sort of like mossy sort of vibe.
Yeah,
and the fact that it immediately got one of the biggest Studio Ghibli things into my mind is definitely a good sign for animation.
And of course, it's done by Madhouse. So, the Madhouse never, after Perfect Blue became a big success, because that was a low budget movie, they never skimped on the budget for Satoshi Kon's films.
I do love looking that the budget of the movie is 1.2 million, according to Wikipedia. Yeah. And the box office was U.S. only recognized on Wikipedia here, but it was only $37,000.
Yeah.
So by that remark, you'd think, no, it was terrible, but yet everyone loves it. So
it's such a good. Actually, because you also had said that you had seen part of this that was in the English dub.
Yes.
What do you think of the English dub?
I don't know what I would think of it if I saw it from the very beginning, where that was the first thing I was shown.
Yeah.
But from the short period that I saw the English dub in, because I totally watched this legally, guys, 100%.
I own it.
Yeah, so that makes it okay, right? Right?
It does.
But there was a lot, I want to say less emotion. I think it's the same thing that you were saying back in our first episode of you got less emotion from the dubbed version of Deku than you did.
Yeah.
I feel like it was that same thing where it was particularly the scene where she lost the key on set. And it was actually stolen by Eiko. It was that scene. And to hear her just be like, oh, please, look, everyone, please, it couldn't have just walked away. Mind you, they matched the subtitles perfectly. Like, it wasn't like they were changing up that many lines. They did add a few, I will say, but they didn't change that many lines. But like there was just, I don't know, they were obviously putting in some emotion to it, but when I went back to the Japanese subbed version and rewatched it again, it was like there was a different level to it.
Yeah.
It was just a little bit deeper. Also, looking at the Japanese and English voice acting cast, they had 3 different actresses for
Yeah,
Chiyoko.
they did, and I know some of the work.
Yeah,
from,
and just one actress for all 3 ages of her being a child, middle-aged, and then elderly, which is, I feel like a little bit too much to ask for one actor, but
Yeah, I mean, because also, I think one of the reasons that that's a problem over here is because we all have the same, like, 20, 30 some odd voice actors doing every goddamn anime voice.
even in this movie, the credited cast here, Genya was played by John Vernon, and a managing director of something was also played by John Vernon.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
they just recast, like, I don't remember the character, so obviously it wasn't that big of a deal, but they recast the same guy twice for the same movie, so.
And I bet that if you also wanted to look up half of the other people who are in here, you'll probably find people who they've done a shit ton of work with anime voice acting,
Yeah.
and that's not a bad thing. But I think that the voice acting for anime films in Japan obviously is taken with a lot more seriousness. Because it's, even for the more ridiculous ones, like for some reason, a lot of the voice acting just feels, it impresses a lot more that it's something that's taken with a lot more sincerity. So
Yeah.
I feel like even in some of the like more cheesier, some of the shittier horror anime that I've watched, the anime, the Japanese voice dub is still always better than the English voice dub, except for Ghost Stories. Because Ghost Stories English dub will be better than the Japanese dub forever.
To be fair, that is changing the entirety of the script to get there. So,
Yes, that is very true. But they also have some great one-line zingers that just make the show all the more worth it.
but to get back to wrapping up, animation-wise, I didn't really feel like there were any real moments of what's it called Sakuga,
Yeah.
of like these they did the shots and they were beautiful shots, but there were no single moments that shined out as like, hey, we really took a lot of time with this particular bit.
Was there any particular sequence that you think really was the more standout ones rather than any specific moment? Because one thing that I really feel is the editing and as you said before, the really quick cutting and really quick fast-paced stuff is one of the thing that hallmarks it all.
I would put that more on the editing than the animation, because that's like they were just basically reusing the animation from the earlier scenes, but because of how it was all cut together with the emotion that was going on, it's hit so much harder.
Yeah.
But it wasn't really the animation itself that was changed. It was
That's
just
true.
how it was put together.
That's true.
In terms of specific sequences, I think I already mentioned, if not, I did off camera, the sequence after she rides off on a horse after the samurai thing. It kind of goes like vaporwave for a good like 30 seconds, but it's got this moving right into the audio. It's got it's got a great beat to it. I really liked that whole sequence right up until it stopped. But it was very. I mean, once it stopped, it was still good. It was still good, but it was one of those sudden stops. I think it was her riding on a bike down a hill, and then she runs into the police guy, and it's just like supposed to be a complete change in tone. But I was just like, oh man, I was kind of getting into that.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that really struck me about the film, especially, is the fact that it does have such dramatic changes in tone depending on obviously the films that are being entered, and also like I think that the reason why the editing really works is because because there is so much mirrored action in her actual life and her in the movies that she works on,
right?
Because you never really know going into a scene whether or not that scene is reality or fiction. The only way that you'll ever know that is by the end of the scene. Usually at that point, then you actually are able to determine whether or not that actually happened.
You can hedge a pretty good bet depending on clothing styles.
Yeah.
If they're dressed as 13th century warriors.
Yeah, well, of course, the period pieces are easier, but like the more of the stuff, like when she was running in the to get to the train, like that entire sequence, I completely believe that was happening in that moment because nothing leading up to that point had made me believe otherwise.
But of course, the question is, did that happen? Like, where was the line of demarcation? What did happen? What didn't happen?
Exactly, and I think honestly, it stopped being reality after, because she starts running because she gets the letter from the people that, oh, they're, he's leaving. I think it even stopped right before that. I think it's when, after she leaves the shed. And like, there's like the bloody rags and stuff like that there. After she leaves the shed, I think that's the movie.
And like that's where I first thought so as well. But then when you get into later films, like, just tell me from a standpoint of looking at this after the fact, what are the odds that we're going to say 7 films? There were obviously more, but he specifically said the 7 roles at one point of
I think
this
so.
character. So let's just say, what are the odds that all 7 films revolved around a woman trying to get a key to a person?
Or getting, or at least having to get to somebody.
Right, because
to some guy.
in almost every role, she mentions, if not shows, the same key on camera, and then talks about, like, finding the guy. Either that's typecast to the nth degree, or none of those, like, they were always different MacGuffins, if they happened at all. And that's, that's
also
the sort of thing where we don't know. Like, that's obviously a part of her life. The key is a part of her life. But how much of that actually crept into the movies? How much of it was kept entirely separate and we're just seeing it as part of the movie?
Yeah.
I don't know. And then the same sort of thing of Eiko was constantly apparently playing the same character over top of her through, like, all of the movies.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. So all right. So kind of wrapping up. If you have to give this film a rating on a scale of 5 stars, what would you give this this narrative adventure that we've been on?
So as we base this based off of first arcs of series, 5 would be I'm continuing regardless as to what the comments would say, but obviously there's nothing to continue with. So I'll just say 5 is
in a result, like 5 would be something that you would go out of your way to recommend to people.
Yeah, I would. I'm very, very hesitant to do this, seeing as it's our second episode. But I am gonna just give this 5.
Nice,
because I gave My Hero 4 to 4.5, and I stand by that. But this was head and shoulders above that first arc of My Hero, like, in a different way, mind you. You have to measure it entirely separately, but it was, no matter what way you measure it, it's still going to be well ahead of it.
I mean, and also it's hard to compare a feature film to the first 3 arcs of a television series, because
first 3 episodes.
First 3 episodes of the first arc of a television series, because they're structured and they're prepared in such a different way.
Yeah, like, I have emotional payoff for this movie. I saw where it all went to. The show was just setting me up for that.
Exactly, because especially the first arcs are always they're primarily all introductory arcs, unless you're watching like a very short OVA series.
But I will definitely give this 5 stars, and I the reason I'm so hesitant is because, like, now the benchmark has been
It is
set.
a high bar. I have gone out of my way to introduce us to a couple of extremely good things right off the bat.
Yep.
So we might have to change it up. We might have to change it up so we can get a little bit more of a variety going on in here. So everyone else, thanks for listening. What do y'all think of Millennium Actress? If you want us to cover another Satoshi Kon project, let us know in the comments.
Also, in the comments, tell me which parts were real. I'm curious as to if this has been decided or not in the comments.
Honestly, I would love that actual debate, because I want people to discuss this a little bit more too. I think that we need to bring Kon back into the spotlight of discussion here.
For a second there, I didn't think you were going to end that sentence and just say, we need to bring Kon back.
We need to bring Kon back. We need to resurrect him, and he needs to fucking finish Dreaming Machine, because it's never going to get done. It's never going to get done. It's never going to get done. I wrote a ranking for the Anime News Network about Satoshi Kon. You go and read that. I'll put that in the description too.
Cool.
And all the other deets in the description. We'll catch you next time, and we'll be discussing something different. Something notorious, as I've decided. We're going to be discussing 2017's Handshakers.
Well, based off that description, I'm sure it's just going to be the greatest thing ever created.
You know what? You're gonna have to prepare the motion sickness pills.
Made possible by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.